Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, October 29th, 2019, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at Casco Bay High School in the Great Space. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Atkinson,
Here.
Mr. Balfont,
Here.
Ms. Bondo,
Présente.
Ms. Figdor,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Morioni,
Here.
Ms. Thompson, Ms. Trevorrow, Mr. Nabanza, Mr. Norris,
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski, Mr. Samuntu,
Présent.
Mr. Abdirahman,
Here.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. So just a heads up, we did know ahead of time that Ms. Trevorrow would not be here tonight. She's out of town. And Ms. Thompson is here. She's walking in right now. And also Mr. Inabanza, our Casco Bay High School rep. He is not with us tonight. He plays soccer for Portland High School, and tonight's their first playoff game. They were supposed to start at 7 o'clock playing South Portland. So I'm sure as we move through our meeting tonight, hopefully we'll get some sort of score updates. Having said that, could everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the report of the chair, I have a few things I wanted to mention. I guess first of all, since our last meeting, a couple of events that I wanted to talk about. Back on October 18th, the Multicultural Multilingual Department organized an amazing conference, the Beyond Borders Conference, which dealt with immigrants and integration in our community. We had a amazing opening program that included our student rep, Joseph Inabanza, and his story was highlighted, and then he addressed the crowd. And as you would expect, Joseph was just great. Really proud of him and the way that he contributed to what ended up being a really powerful event. The rest of the day was filled with sessions that focused on 3 different themes, including America as a refugee, immigrants, economic power and access, and also education and integration. Again, it was a great conference. I heard from many people that attended that they left there just feeling energized, and we're looking forward to next year when we do it once again. Also, since our last meeting, last week, I attended the Maine School Management Association annual conference. I was the Portland delegate. As the board recalls, during our last meeting, we reviewed all the resolutions that were up for our consideration. First of all, the conference was great. Keynote speaker, Dr. Donna Beagley, who spoke about the importance of our staff and our schools, and even us board members and policymakers to be aware of how poverty affects our children and families in our communities, and specifically interventions and ideas that we can use to better serve those communities. She's an expert in poverty. Which is, I left the room saying, we have something in common. I'm an expert in being broke. Which is like not a joke, but when you're broke, that's a few levels further ahead than being poor. Being broke is where majority of middle America lives, but we're not poor. We don't live in poverty. So I think that that's one of those things that she brought up that I think was impactful in how we view these students and how we really need to go out of our way to understand the realities that they face and our responsibility to meet them there. Thought a lot about Ms. Thompson last year during the NSBA annual conference. She attended a session that kind of put her in a situation of poverty, and she had to then deal with some circumstances. So I thought that was really insightful. I remember her speaking about it. So again, the keynote was great. The rest of the conference was phenomenal as well. I attended a session where I had the opportunity to speak with the Department of Education Commissioner, Pender Making. All board members, administrators, and superintendents in the room were able to ask questions of her. I'm really happy to say that there's this really strong sense of positive energy around the direction that the Department of Education is taking right now. And there's a lot of energy about what we can achieve. Certainly a lot of relief that we are past the LePage era. and that we have an opportunity to really create and strengthen public education here in Maine in a way that we have not been able to in recent years. So that was really exciting. A common theme on the questions that were asked of her had to do with CTE funding. So that's something that the rest of the state of Maine is really invested in. I know that we had a really insightful discussion about how CTE funding affects us here in Portland. At the end of that session, I had a few minutes to speak directly to her one-on-one. It was a great opportunity. She was very receptive, recognizing the unique challenges that Portland faces, the inflated valuation of our properties, and the lack of wages or income of our community members to match that. So the burden on our taxpayers is something that hearing her recognize how communities are struggling with that when it comes to state funding was really good, and knowing that they're putting a lot of attention and energy into finding equitable ways of funding education in Maine. So that was really good. After that, I attended the regional meetings. So we got to talk to some of the other board members that are part of the Cumberland County school districts. Another great opportunity to network and to get to know some of the challenges that other districts around us are dealing with. A lot of questions there were around infrastructure needs, renovations, deferred maintenance, stuff that we're all really knowledgeable about. As you can imagine, we're not alone in those challenges. And then lastly, we got to work at the assembly itself where we voted on the resolutions. I will at one point send something via email to let you guys know the results. Pretty much all of the resolutions were approved. Some of them were amended very lightly, and one was more substantive. The CTE funding one, you recall that we had a concern about it being more of a regional approach of advocacy versus so the resolution was amended to affect all CTE programs. But after talking to the superintendent, I think we sort of kind of quickly recap that doesn't necessarily mean very much difference for us here in Portland in the way that we have to pay for our programming. So again, just to cut it short, a good conference. I was happy to have represent Portland Public Schools, and I was happy for the opportunity to get to meet and talk to so many other board members around the state of Maine. One quick note. In the regional meeting, the person that was leading it, she's a school board member from Scarborough, Jackie Perry, and she is who Ms. Thompson is going to be replacing at the state board level. So we got to cast our vote at the delegation. I very proudly voted for Ms. Thompson to take that seat. And so I just wanted to point out that Ms. Perry, who knows Ms. Thompson, and has known her for several years, had some very nice things to say about Ms. Thompson, and spoke about how prepared she is and how good and you're going to be in that role, and how your experience, what you're going to bring to the state board is so valuable. And I know us here in Portland are going to appreciate having a direct link to the state level. So thank you for volunteering to take on that extra position and that extra workload, and we're proud that you're going to be there. So thank you, Ms. Thompson. Lastly, this morning, I was at Lyman Moore Middle School, where the students hosted the 4 candidates for the mayoral race, and the school and the staff did an amazing job. These kids all had an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates, gave us all an opportunity to get to know them better. It was a great opportunity for these children to understand the system, the civics in their city, and to get to know these people that are going to be leaders in their communities. So I was just so proud to be there and to see how excited the kids were. My daughter's a student there, so over the last 3 weeks, I've heard about how they've been preparing and the discussions they've had in their classrooms, and it is thrilling just to see that at one point, many of these children are probably better informed about these candidates than even their parents, and that thing, I think that's purposeful. I've heard in the past, and I had a teacher yesterday say this again, that often parents will just ask their kids, who should I vote for? Because they probably know more about the candidates than they themselves. So I think that we're doing a great job at including that in our children's education. So I'm just really, really happy of how that went down today. And then one last announcement. Wanted to let the board and the public know that we have scheduled the annual State of the Schools address. That is something that the city charter has me as the chair of the board responsible to deliver at the city council. So we're going to do that on November 18th at City Hall, starting at 4:30 p.m. I'll save you a seat. What else can I say? I hope you join us. I'm working with staff and the superintendent to draft that address. I think I want to be really thoughtful about the way that we present it and try to be as informative as possible in how we inform the city and the community of how the public schools are doing. I think that's all I have for today. Having said that, I'll pass it on. Today, our agenda says that we're up for during high school student report. We're actually up for adult education report. So Axel Samuntu, our representative from Portland Adult Education, is ready to report. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Axel, this might be your final report as a representative from Adult Education.
Yes.
So go ahead, shine us with some information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. February 5th, 2019 was the first time I present a report to the school board. I start by thanking all the good students and staff of PAE for the support during my campaign. As a student member of the Portland Board of Public Education, I bring the different perspective of Portland adult education students to the table. For example, adult education provides opportunity for individuals like me to improve their reading and writing skill, prepare for college or training program, or to earn their high school credential. They can also become computer savvy, learning financial, budgeting skill, and so much more. Also, Portland adult education continues to need more resources to support more than 2,400 students for more than 90 countries who took class at PAE. Today, October 29th, in the day to present my last report at the school board meeting, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the members of Portland Board Education for your support during my term as a PAE student rep to this board. During my term, I present 4 reports, and each report addresses a particular issue. First, I present Portland adult education, who we are, what we are doing, and what we wait to attend. The second report mentioned that students need Wi-Fi, and we did get it this year. I want to say thank you to the member of school board for their support during this process and ask them to continue their support for our need if possible. I also present that 11 students of Portland Adult Education attend the Education Academy graduation, and the graduate from this class had the skill to become educational technician or substitute teacher. My third report presented that Portland Adult students need transportation. On that point, we had different meetings. We've discussed the issue with school board member, the manager of Metro Bus, Mr. Greg Jordan, and the PAE staff. In near future, I hope that will be a reality for Portland adult students to have access to the transportation in same way as high school students. I hope that school board member, Portland adult education staff, Metro Bus board member, and the next student rep of PAE will continue to discuss and to resolve the transportation issue. My fourth and last report is today. I again want to thank you and the students of PAE who trust and voted for me to represent our great school on the Board of Public Education. Let me say again thank you to our wonderful PAE staff and fantastic school board members for their collaboration, their help, and the good job they are doing for our education system and our community. On October 3rd, at PAE, we held a panel regarding the election of the next student representative to the Portland Board of Education. The goal was to educate PAE students about the role of student representative. We had 4 panelists. The first, the superintendent, Xavier Botana, who talked about the role of students, including working with the Board of Education. The second, the assistant of superintendent, Mr. Aaron, explained the reason why we had student representative and especially why we had a PAE representative. The third, the chair of school board, Senor Rodriguez, spoke about the role of the school board in governing the school and the importance of the student representative for his perspective. And the last was student rep of PAE, Mr. Axel Samonto, who talked about the role of student rep and the impact that their experience had on him. Anita St. Andrew was moderator. She asked one principal question for all panelists to give their truth about the requirement of the future PAE student rep. The panelists answered the question from students who might want to be candidate for student representative. I also want to talk about a few events coming at PAE. A TOEFL prep course designed for students who need to take a TOEFL test for admission into an education program or for professional licensing. The second event is Job Class A and B to improve English for the workplace, and Intensive A Week course where a student learns to apply professional transferable skill to us, to US for workforce. And the last is Portland Professional Connection Info Session. The student can come to PAE on November 5th at 2 in room 8 to learn about the Portland Professional Connection Program, the program that matches foreign trained professionals with established business people and community leaders. This is a program for the City of Portland Office of Economic Opportunity. For more information, you can ask the desk office of PAE. And the last event is a coffee with community policing. Join us for coffee with community policing December 2nd at 1 p. to 2 in the Social Work Hub at PAE. Today is my last report as a representative of PAE, and soon I will be the former student representative of PAE. Thank you, PAE. Thank you, School Board.
Thank you so much, Axel. Great report once again. I can just say that you've heard me say before how proud we are to have added the adult ed student representative seat. I think that you've helped us reframe what we mean when we say student voice and how important it is to include it in our deliberations. Just like you pointed out in your report right now, at that budget process level, your advocacy for those issues that affect Portland education. I saw you at that forum talk to your peers, and you've just really set the example. You've set the bar high for what we expect from the next rep. And so we all are incredibly thankful for what you've done here. So great job. Next, we're up for the report of the superintendent. Take it away, Mr. Botana.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland. We are honored to have their children learning side by side with all of our students in our schools today. Last week was National Student Transportation Week. I would like to thank and recognize the team at our Student Transportation Department. Every day, they are the first and the last face of the Portland Public Schools for over half of our students. They transport our athletics and co-curricular teams to events. They endeavor to make sure that every student makes it to their destination safely and on time. They train for safety and for building relationships with our students. They're the key to our success as a school district, so I'd like to recognize them for all that they do to help us achieve our promise to the community. And fittingly, there was lots of transportation-related news last week. As you may have heard, Thomas Built, one of the leading makers of buses, issued a recall for some 50,000 buses nationwide. We have up to 9 of our buses, potentially, that could be included in the recall. But I want to make sure that the board and the public understand that the recall does not affect the safety of our buses. It involves the headrests in those buses and their ability to absorb impact in case of an accident. The recall does not require the buses being taken offline, as this is a voluntary recall, and the remediation will begin in early December, and we expect that the vendor will come to our depot to perform the remediation during downtime for our fleet. We also had a news story about the challenges that transportation departments across the state and country are having with staffing their routes. Portland Public Schools, as many of you will recall, implemented some enhancements to our programming last year in an effort to be more attractive as an employer. While these actions have been successful in getting us to full staffing at this time, we continue to look for driver trainees and recognize that many of our outstanding employees are retirees or eligible for retirement. So as always, I'll take this opportunity to plug our transportation department and ask anyone in the audience or watching at home to consider helping us to recruit more transportation workers. I would like to thank all of the staff at both the district and city who worked to help us make the call during the early nor'easter a couple weeks ago. It served as a training for our soon-to-come daily storm watch. As you know, we were mostly able to run school with only a 1-hour delay on Thursday. The island schools, Presumpscot and Ocean Avenue Elementary School, were without power through Friday, so they were closed. Because we were not able to do our standard notification process under those circumstances, principals stepped up and were the ones who managed the calls home. To ensure that we would be able to keep students safe who did not get the message in time, our transportation department ran their routes, and we had breakfast ready for those who came in. Staff reported to work so that they could provide appropriate supervision until families could be contacted, and on Friday, we were able to identify students that were depending on school meals and get those to them. Because we didn't know how long the outage would last, our staff were busy preparing packets should they be needed for the following week. We're now working with the Department of Education to have these days waived consistent with Chapter 125. That would mean that these schools would not have to make those days up at the end of the school year. I will keep you updated on this. A week ago last Friday, the Deering High School boys soccer team was subjected to racially themed taunting during their hard-fought victory at Thornton Academy. Our boys conducted themselves with dignity, but make no mistake, it hurt. The most appalling part of it was that when I spoke to the students, they felt that sure, it was worse than normal, but that what they're used to and have normalized is absolutely inconsistent with the values and ideals behind inter-school athletics. We're determined to work with the Maine Principals Association and our colleagues across the state to organize a campaign to stop this behavior from becoming the norm. I was proud of the response of RSU 21 in Kennebunk and Wells when we contacted them about the incidents and asked them for their assistance to ensure that we did not have a repeat. They strengthened their pregame statement to include an explicit reference against hate speech, and both teams stood behind a banner that called for an end to racism. I know that it meant a great deal to me, to the parents, and above all to our students to see that there can be another way. Our athletic directors, administrators, and coaches will continue to work with the appropriate authorities to make sure that this other way becomes the norm. We've conducted a full investigation of the events and have been in dialogue with Thornton Academy and the Maine Principals Association. We're working on the appropriate responses for that particular event while we continue to work for broader changes at the state level. Work on our buildings for our future school renovations continue. We're still working with the Maine Department of Education and the Maine Department of Administrative and Financial Services to waive the customary procurement process so that we may accelerate and leverage our construction schedule to maximize our value. While that proceeds, we're about to begin the process of engaging the community in the actual design process. To that end, 3 community forums will be held for members of the public to learn about upcoming elementary school construction projects at Longfellow, Reike, and Presumpscot, and share their thoughts and vision. The first forum will be at Longfellow on October 30th, so that's tomorrow. The second one will be at Reike on November 6th, and the third at Presumpscot on November 13th. Each forum will run from 6 to 7:30 p.m., and I would like to invite members of the public and staff to attend and help to shape our 21st century learning spaces. Finally, I want to mention that Priya Natarajan, mathematics teacher here at Casco Bay, has been recognized with a Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching Mathematics and Science. This prestigious award from the National Academy for the Sciences is a pinnacle of recognition. Because this only happened last week, we could not coordinate things to have Priya here today, so we look forward to recognizing her in person at our next meeting on November 12th, also here. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, for the report of the Secretary, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of September 24, 2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, second by Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? We have a public today. Seeing none, any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of September 24, 2019, please indicate. All those opposed? Abstaining? Mr. Balfins? Do we get those?
Yep.
Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of October 15, 2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Bondo. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Victor.
At the meeting on the 15th, I was the one vote against the CIP because I find it inconsistent with our need as a district to address our significant capital needs. However, it wasn't indicated that I was the vote against. It just indicated that the vote was 7 of us, 7-1. And I think we might have gotten out of the practice of indicating who's voted which way, which makes it impossible for the public to know which board members supported or opposed a particular issue unless they go back and watch the meeting, which is very, very challenging. So I would like to include in the minutes that I was the vote against, and to ensure that as we move forward that we indicate which board members voted which way. Thank you.
So the quick question is, do we want to accept that as a friendly amendment because the vote is recorded, so we'll just be adding Ms. Victor's name, or do we want to request an amendment so it's like an official amendment? Friendly?
No, I was just going to say, we used to do it that way.
We intend to
yeah.
do it that way. It's totally just an
There you
oversight.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll take it as a friendly amendment, and we'll add Ms. Victor's name as the one person who voted against it. We're okay with that? Okay. So then we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of October 15, 2019 with the friendly amendment of Ms. Victor, please indicate. All those opposed? Abstaining? Ms. Morioni was not present. Did we get those?
Did you get them?
Ms. Morioni abstained. Everybody else in favor, with the students voting in favor as well. All right, moving on. Consent items. Will the superintendent please read the list of items?
Yes. Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district as required by that policy. All of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. And our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude, as well as for their tax purposes. And I would like to thank the many generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value and historical or commemorative significance. And for this meeting, those are Riverton Elementary School received the following donations: school supplies from the Riverton branch of the Portland Public Library, 2 child-sized guitars from Courtney James of Portland, school supplies from Madeline Drew of Portland, school supplies from Jenny Thuralt of Portland, backpacks filled with school supplies and several boxes of snacks from Americold of Portland, and hardcover and paperback books from Holly Alley, also of Portland. Lincoln Middle School received Loco Robo Robotics to be used in technology class from One Semiconductor of South Portland, and Ocean Avenue Elementary School received 30 backpacks filled with school supplies, as well as 30 pairs of shoes from Ellen Santora and Simon Adams of Falmouth. And we are very grateful for their generous support and contributions to the work of the Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we're on to old business. Consideration and action to appoint Bradford Post as community representative of the DABC, filling the vacancy. Is there a motion? Ms. Figdor, second. Mr. Atkinson, are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, or rather, Superintendent, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Were you going to speak on the motion? I'm sorry. Why don't we backtrack a little bit? Superintendent, set us up, please.
Okay, in September, the Board Appointments Committee issued a call for applications for participation in board committees. This was the result of a change in the board's policy BCF and BCFR, which you approved earlier this year. The call for applications closed on October 10th and yielded over 30 responses. The District Advisory Building Committee, the DABC, advises the Board of Education on all matters related to the buildings for our future school renovations. The current DABC has been without a community representative since the resignation of Hamza Hado sometime last year. There were 7 applicants who expressed an interest in filling the DABC vacancy. On October 16th, the Board Appointments Committee met an executive session to review applicants. The committee considered all candidates using the criteria outlined in policy BCF. The committee selected Mr. Bradford Post as the candidate for the vacancy. Committee Chair Ms. Morioni contacted Mr. Post, and he has agreed to serve if approved by the board. In your packet, you have the responses Mr. Post provided in his application. Because we have significant discussions pending for the DABC, we are bypassing the first reading and asking that you approve this recommendation tonight. And I don't know, Chair Morioni, if you had any comments that you wanted to make, something to add to that.
Yes. Thank you, Superintendent. I just wanted to let the public know the qualifications of Mr. Post, and I believe he's also in the audience, and he's welcome to come up and speak if you'd like to. But I just wanted to highlight a few of his qualifications, and that includes Mr. Post has been a Portland resident for over 20 years, a Maine resident for over 30 years. He's been working as a residential and commercial general contractor for over 30 years in the greater Portland area. He has constructed 2 schools previously in Portland and in the Portland area, one being the Winfield Children's House, and the Montessori School in Falmouth, Maine. The other being the Iris Network School for the Blind in Portland. He's been an active member in the Presumpscot Elementary School's advocacy for their representation and inclusion in the 4-school bond work and its renovations. He has a degree in fine arts from Columbia College in Chicago and worked on a master's degree in fine arts at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And Mr. Post, you're welcome to come up to say a few remarks, but we're very happy to have you as a candidate for us to vote on tonight. I think we'll maybe take the vote, and then after, if it is approved, if you'd like to come up for remarks. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. So are there any, we'll move on. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any further board discussion? No? Ms. Figdor?
I'd like to thank Mr. Post for applying for the District Level Advisory Building Committee. I think it's critical that we have representation across our city, and I'm thrilled to have a former Presumpscot parent and a member of the Presumpscot community, the broader Presumpscot community, in addition to Mr. Post's qualifications as a builder. So I'm really delighted to have Mr. Post join the building committee.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor. Any other board comments? Ms. Bondo?
I would like to recognize the process from the appointing committee. It was something that we discussed earlier on the end of last year, how we can all come out with a different approach to try to nominate someone from the building. And the process was really fair. We have a really great candidate, but the way we proceed and we really value the older candidate, but really the one came out is what really defined what we need to try to represent the community in general. So I'm really supporting that.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Any other board discussion? Ms. Morioni?
Thank you so much, Representative Bondo. I apologize, I didn't thank all of the other candidates, all of the community members that did apply to be part of this, and our appointments committee will be meeting sometime next week. We are needing to change our meeting on November 6th, and we're right now in the process of trying to find the next night. But we are going to be taking those names forward for the other building level advisory committees that include Presumpscot, Reiki, and Longfellow. So thank you again for those community members that did apply.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Anyone else? Seeing none, same thing. I'm just going to repeat. I want to thank Mr. Post for remaining engaged with this process. I know that he's been tapped into what's been going on and now throwing his name as a candidate or somebody for the board to consider to join the committee. I think that we're excited to have that committee at full force again, or full representation, and not have any empty seats. The board has repeatedly talked about how important it is to keep the community engaged and have those community seats filled. So I'm excited about this finally being brought up to us. So having said that, all those in favor of appointing Bradford Post as the community representative of the DABC, filling the vacancy, please indicate. And that's unanimous with the students voting in favor. Brad, if you wanted to address the board, you don't have to. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to come up, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you all for supporting me in my efforts to be a part of this process. I have a lot of respect for you folks and what you do. I'm going to be learning a lot, I'm sure, about process. And going forward, I just hope I can be good at listening and contributing in a positive way. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. So moving on, consideration and action pursuant to sections 2307 and 1485, section 4 of Title 20A, to authorize the superintendent of schools to transfer from available funds budgeted for the FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget no more than 5% of the total appropriations for any cost center to another cost center or among other cost centers of FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget, provided that the total FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget shall not increase by such transfers. The superintendent shall provide written communication at the time such authority is exercised. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Morioni. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. After reviewing budget to actual data for FY19, there's a need to transfer a total of $399,512 to fund budget deficits we're expecting in 2 state cost center categories. This requires board approval in order to comply with board policy DIC for transfer of funds. For reference, state law allows transfers from voter-approved expenditure category of up to 5% of that cost center category without referendum approval. Cost center categories are what we refer to as the 11 state categories. Additionally, policy DIC limits administrative authority of such transfers to $50,000 per category, and transfers greater than $50,000 are the ones that require board approval. So tonight, I'm seeking approval for 1 transfer in order to fund 2 deficits. The transfer would move $399,512 from the facilities maintenance category in order to fund $56,745 in school administration and $342,767 in transportation and buses. The budget deficit in school administration can be attributed to several sizable retirement and sick leave payouts that were made in FY19, and the deficit in transportation is primarily a result of the need to procure contracted services for a good part of the year for several routes due to a driver shortage, as well as an increase in our vehicle maintenance costs. So with that, I know that Miranda Fasulo, our Chief Financial Officer, is here if you have any questions, but otherwise we'd ask for your approval.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none. Any board discussion? With none, we'll put it to a vote. Easy night, Miranda. All those in favor of, all those in favor of pursuing, all those in favor, the language is a little bit bad. Consideration and action, I'm sorry, guys. All those in favor of pursuant to Section 2307 and 1485, Section 4 of Title 20-A to authorize the superintendent of schools to transfer from available funds budgeted for the FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget no more than 5% of the total appropriations for any cost center to another cost center or among other cost centers of FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget, provided that the total FY 2019 fiscal year operating budget shall not increase by such transfers. The superintendent shall provide written communication at the time such authority is exercised. Please indicate. And that is unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Whew. Consideration and action to approve an allocation of $19,000 from the board's contingency fund to be used for 4 board members and 3 student representatives to attend the 2020 National School Board Association NSBA annual conference in the spring. Is there a motion? Ms. Moroney, second by Ms. Thompson. Superintendent, will you speak on the motion, please?
I really don't have much to say about this. It's self-explanatory. This is requesting the board to appropriate $19,000 from its contingency fund so that 4 board members and 3 student representatives can attend the 2020 National School Boards Association conference. This has been the norm for the last couple of years, or maybe longer, for the board to attend the NSBA conference. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have, the board has attended, I think we started all going together in Boston when they kicked off, and we've gone to 3 or 4 since then. And I just want to put a plug in for it because we talked over my 13 years of being on the board how we allocate funds for professional development for our staff, for our teachers, for our principals, but us being on the Board of Education and decision makers, we weren't getting any professional development for ourselves. And so we talked and hired also a consultant that came in and talked to us about different ways the board was doing business, but also the need for us to grow as individuals, but also as a team and a board. So we have allocated the resources the last 5 years. I strongly encourage people to support it. I've attended the last, well, ever since we've been going, I guess. And it's a great networking opportunity. Also, a lot of great information, as Mr. Rodriguez mentioned. Attending one of the events, one of the sessions on poverty was really an eye-opening experience for me. But also just meeting people from different districts across the country and networking with them. But also, I think it gives us an opportunity on a national level to talk to people that are the change makers. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity. I'm going to be going, as some of you know, or all of you know, in January to do a mission work in the Dominican Republic as a result of attending the National School Board Conference. I'll be representing on the national level. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I hadn't gone and applied for the last 5 years and finally got chosen. And I think that's a great opportunity not only for myself as personal growth, but also for the district to give back to the community as a whole, but also to the world and for other students. So I guess for me, I would strongly encourage everyone to support it, and it's something that we should continue for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Any other board discussion? Ms. Moroney?
I just want to echo Ms. Thompson's remarks. I think I've gone every year as well, and what I want to impress upon the board, as you already know, we come back with lots of information, and we come back to share it with the board and the community, and it only, I think, makes us better board members. So I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm hopeful that we'll all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maroney. Anyone else? Seeing none. So I just want to point out, when we asked board members and student reps to let us know if they were interested in attending, the list of folks that, quote unquote, threw their name out there is greater than what we have on the motion. So we actually have 5 board members that are interested in attending and 3 student reps. So if we intend to invite all the people that said that they were interested, we'd have to amend the motion. If you'd like me, I'll go over the list of names so that we know. Yes, Ms. Thompson?
Just clarifying questions. So if all 5 were to go, I know 19 is a rough number. We came in lower than that last year. Do we have an estimate as to approximately what it would be for the 5 and 3? Maybe a couple thousand more?
Expect a couple thousand more,
Yeah.
Okay.
maybe, 3,000 more, just given that
Max.
there were 7 and it was 19. So I
Right. 21.
guess that it's, another 2,500 or so.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
So I'm putting that out there. I don't know if that prompts any further board discussion, or if that, yes, Ms. Maroney?
I definitely, I would like to include all 5 board members, and even if there are, you said the 3 students, that's what we have. So I would like to make an amendment to change the vote to an allocation of, I'd say, $22,000 from the board's contingency fund to be used for 5 board members and 3 student representatives to attend the 2020 National School Board Association Annual Conference in the spring.
Is Ms. Maroney second? Are there any questions on the amendment? Also, Ms. Maroney, I think you did a really fine job explaining it. We're just adding 1 extra board member, and we're increasing the amount from $19,000 to $22,000. Is there any questions on the amendment that Ms. Maroney just proposed? Seeing none, any public comment on the amendment on the floor? Seeing none, any board discussion on the amendment? Ms. Figdor?
I certainly agree with the need for professional development, including on the board, and I will support this amendment. However, I am sensitive to how much money we'll spend on this conference, given what we expect to be a very tight budget. So I think it's in a different budget circumstance. I would say, by all means, given the budget that we might face, depending on where state funding ends up, I feel like I might regret this increase. So I think, just wanted to express that sentiment that it is a lot of money, despite the need and the importance of professional development. It is a lot of money for our conference.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor. Any other board discussion? Ms. Bondo, yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to echo Mrs. Figdor, because when we see about the price, I wonder myself, since last time when we had that for the amount where we spending for the conference. So is that something then we can try to, because if we have a 5 member and some of the members they already been there for several times, is there any way we can try just to have less members, at least give a chance for the new members who never attend, at least, and then we can have a really stable amount, little less than we're supposed to spend. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I'll add, I think I'm also sensitive of what this amount represents, particularly within the conversation of a really tight budget year. I do think that the board has expressed an interest in pursuing professional development, and this is a great opportunity to do that. Like Ms. Thompson started to point out, even though we're allocating this entire amount, historically we have spent less than what we've allocated. So it's hard for me to say exactly how much less than this we're going to come under, but I don't expect us to go through the entire sum that we're suggesting to approve here, the $22,000. I do feel comfortable supporting this motion and allocating these funds. I would say, I just want to put it out there again, if this prompts any further discussion. If we do have strong reservations towards allocating this amount of money, I am comfortable taking my name off of the list. I think I would like to pursue other opportunities of professional development if they were available, but I put my name on the list for a reason, and that's that I am interested. So just to put it out there, I don't want anyone to feel like like there isn't an option or that we're not willing to consider an option. So especially after hearing concerns for the amount. So having said that, Ms. Thompson, if you have something to add.
Yeah, I just want, especially for the newer people, and it's those of us that have been there, we've been very fiscally conservative to the point of every opportunity that a vendor has for free meals. We go to those, so we don't utilize our daily allocation for food, but also it's kind of Ms. Morioni and I, one of the times we stayed in a hotel that had the food, we made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and brought it with us, and snacks and things of that nature. So it's not a freewheeling event where we go and spend money for the sake of spending money. We're very, very conservative of the fact that, and we're very acknowledging the fact that money is tight. But out of a $106 million budget, $22,000 for the decision makers, for me, personally, is not a lot of money for us to be able to learn more and be able to work with the superintendent and his staff that much better. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Mariani?
I also want to completely agree with my colleagues that this seems extraordinarily high. The board each year has a contingency fund of $100,000. We have that contingency fund we've used it for everything from bringing in an outside consultants to do studies for the district to things like this, professional development for the board. I am willing to also take my name off the list if other board members. I do like the idea very much of all board members, if we were able to all of us go. But most importantly, the newer board members, it makes a lot of sense too. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that this is quite a bit of money, but I do absolutely want to impress the fact that we go there definitely to learn a lot and bring it back and share, and we're always a source of information after that too from what we learned. So I hopefully people will support the motion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maroney. So one last thing I want to add, I just want to go through the names to make sure that no one is left out. The names that are included in the 5 board members and 3 student reps are Ms. Morioni, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Bondo, Ms. Figdor, myself, and then out of the students, Mr. Norris, Mr. Samuntu, and Mr. Inabanza. So that makes up the total sum. So having said all that, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving an allocation of $22,000 from the board's contingency fund to be used for 5 board members and 3 student representatives to attend the 2020 National School Board Association's NSBA annual conference in the spring, please indicate. Excellent. Is all those opposed? 1. So we had 8 in favor, 1 opposed, with the students voting with the majority. Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve all non-substantive changes to policies recommended for revision by Drummond Woodson in policy books A and B as outlined in the attached memorandum. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second. Mr. Atkinson. Mr. Superintendent, would you please speak to the motion? I'm sorry, I'm moving fast.
Sorry. Yes. Here we go. As part of its work this year, the Policy Committee set out to update in order all policies in the district's current policy book. District Legal Counsel reviewed all existing policies for accuracy and compliance with current statutes and proposed edits for those needing updates. Over the course of this year, the Policy Committee has reviewed those policies in Books A, which is our foundations and basic commitments, and Book B, Board Operations and Governance. Today, we're asking you to approve changes to those policies. These have been through legal review, the Policy Committee, and our workshop last meeting. The update before the board tonight are for policies that required minor edits, such as updated references or compliance with new statutory language that did not alter the substantive intent of the policy. In addition to the Drummond Woodson review and the recommended changes, the Policy Committee also reviewed the drafts to ensure consistency in the nomenclature and the use of gender-expansive pronouns. There are substantive changes needed to some policies in these books, and those are not the policies that are before you today. Staff are currently working on some of those revisions, and they will be brought through the committee structure as they are ready. As you know, the board, the maintaining our policies aligned with legal requirements and practice is one of the most important jobs of the board, and I hope that we will be able to continue this process into the next board term and hopefully catch up with all of the policies that have these non-substantive required changes while we continue to tackle those more substantive revisions that are needed for some of our policies. I do want to point out that as a result of the workshop at the last meeting, we did make a couple corrections to the policies, and so the policies that you're reviewing changed policy BB back to reflect 6 absences consistent with the charter, and also fixed a typo in the heading of one of our policies. So with that, I don't know if, Ms. Davis, if you have anything as chair of the policy committee that you want to say, but otherwise I think I'd ask for approval.
I think you really covered it pretty well. I would also say to the public that policy updating is sort of an ongoing process, and that if one of our goals was to get our policies sort of legally updated, and recognizing that there are some policies which we might want to delve into more deeply in the future, and but that it was important to get them legally aligned and updated at this point, and not wait to do that work before we might, the board in the future might want to delve more deeply into a policy. So. But it made progress.
2 books down.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing none, do I have any questions? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on the motion? If you want to address the board, if you don't mind coming up to the podium, I'll go over briefly some of our public comment rules. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. If you don't mind, please starting with your name and address. Right around the 3-minute mark, I'll probably interrupt you and see if you need additional time. We probably will not have a problem granting you an extra minute if you need it. And I think that's the gist of it. So if you don't mind.
State my address publicly?
If you don't, at the very least, mind telling us what street you live in.
Okay. My name is Sasha Van Etten. I live on Kenwood Street. I'm an 18-year-old Deering High School graduate and advocate for comprehensive sex education and support for survivors of sexual violence. With me today, I have my team. There's Heidi Randall. Here we go. From Maine Boys to Men. Clara Porter from Prevention Action Change. Ayla Mansman, this is the student from Cape Elizabeth who's been raising issues around Title IX in her school, as well as her mother. So they're here supporting me today. I am here today to ask you to consider our ideas on how to move beyond minor, non-substantive changes to the harassment policy that have been recommended by your attorneys, and how to become an example of youth-informed best practice of Title IX in Maine. So I have papers, am I allowed to pass them around?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to grab those for now.
Paul. Can I pause this for a second?
So number one on the list being the school board form a task of community leaders to address these issues along with us. So sending this policy back to the policy committee instead of implementing it with just minor non-substantive changes. Number two is center student survivors in addressing sexual harassment and assault in schools, because as the people who are impacted by the decisions you're making here today, we have knowledge to share with you on how you could best support us. So number three is require annual Title IX and sexual violence response training for all faculty and staff. As of yesterday, I believe you trained the trained the administrators who rarely come in contact with students on harassment and bullying. But best practice under Title IX is trauma-informed training for all faculty and staff, because all staff are designated reporters. Number four being publicly disseminated information to students and families about their rights under Title IX at the beginning of every school year. I yesterday actually taught another health class about consent and rape culture and how to support survivors in their school. And when I asked them if they knew what Title IX was, none of them could tell me what it was. So then I asked them, who is your Title IX officer for the district? And none of them knew who that was. So obviously none of them know how to report or what is expected when they make a report. So this information should be made public to all students and families at the beginning of every year. Number five, I believe, is address school climate issues by distributing climate surveys annually to all students. This will help us keep track of sexual violence in schools and identify discrimination with anonymous reporting mechanisms to look for patterns of this harassment and assault and discrimination. This is to acknowledge that individuals rarely make formal reports directly and are most likely to seek help and guidance from peers.
Do you need another minute, or are you?
Yes, please. One more minute.
Go for it.
The last item on my list is to engage in best practice prevention programming, because currently, under the Maine Department of Education curriculum that we follow, it doesn't have the word sex in it, let alone consent. So we should establish a consent-oriented, comprehensive sex education curriculum to be signed on by student representatives like myself and local sexual assault response services and sex educators in the community. So I ask you to consider these.
Thank you very much. So what I want, is there anyone else that wants to address the board? So please come up to the podium. And I want to just to as we move along, we don't normally respond to public comment, so it is not intended to be like a dialogue, but certainly we value your input, and we all will continue to have conversations, so we can definitely respond to some of the comments that you made. But the nature of the public comment is just for us to receive your input. So if you're next, if you don't mind your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. I will cut you off after 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, please
I'm
do.
kidding. I know, Adam, so that's what I'm saying.
My
Go
name's
ahead.
Adam Burke. I live at 34 Presnell Street. I'm a candidate for District 3 School Board. And I just want to say I stand with this motion from this former Deering student and the comments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Clara Porter. I live on Ratcliffe Street. I run Prevention Action Change in Portland, which is an organization that works to prevent and intervene and respond to violence. But I'm also a parent of 3 children who have gone through the Portland Public School system. And I really support what Sasha's been doing for the last 2 years in this work, and also what she's trying to do going forward. In my work, I also played the role of the Campus Safety Project Coordinator at University of Southern Maine when that started in 2010, and really worked with that organization, that university system, to create policies and protocols which created this safety net. They chose to train all staff and faculty, which is above and beyond, as Sasha mentioned, so that no matter where a student and to whom a student decided to report something that was challenging to them or something that had happened to them, they got the same response. And that's incredibly important when you're trying to encourage students to trust a system. I think Title IX itself is not a law that can be just controlled or put forward through a policy that's drafted by lawyers and done in, closed meetings. It's a community change law, and that's the way it needs to be implemented. So the voices of students, of parents, of other stakeholders really need to be part of it. And I'd encourage you to think about using the process that we went through for the trans-inclusive policy as a model for how you approach Title IX. It includes requirements for prevention education, the policies, the protocols, of course, all of those educational pieces, how you're going to respond, how you're going to educate people about their options. All of those things are incredibly important. So I just really encourage you to go, make these changes to make our, get us up to date legally, but then go through a real in-depth collaborative process to make the change that we really, really need. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
My name is Heidi Randall. I don't live in Portland. I work for a nonprofit organization called Maine Boys to Men that serves Portland. Is it okay for me to give comment? Great.
Absolutely.
So we work with over 2,000 students in the greater Portland area, from 7th grade, 8th grade, up through high school, as well as adults, coaches, teachers. And we also have a youth advisory council for students age 14 to 24 who comment on policy, who review our curriculums, who work with organizations for best practices. So the goal of all of our work is creating safe schools and safe communities, and really partnering and collaborating with schools to create safe environments for everyone. We just recently received 3-year funding through the Department of Justice. They're very interested in our work, and they are funding us to deliver free training for coaches and educators. And we have developed that training and have already delivered it in the Falmouth and South Portland School District. So we have 20 years experience in the field of creating safety and safe relationships. And why I'm here today is that for the last 3 youth council meetings, the students have focused on current trends in school safety and the need for schools to. This is coming from the young people, not from the organization, so they kind of direct where the conversation goes, and they're very interested and very motivated in helping schools create a path forward with policies and changes. And so what I would like to bring your attention to is the fact that this is a huge invitation to be a leader, as I see it in Maine, in youth-informed best practices. And not only do we have an amazing arrangement of service organizations in South Portland, that are ready to support the school district in creating new policies and best practice. We also have a youth advisory council staffed with young people, as I said, age 14 to 24, who are ready to lend their voices. We also have this amazing young Deering former student, who has created a website. There's a lot of people who are pretty much, the work is kind of done. It's really about getting together and have conversations and looking at the resources that we have and just really sharing them out. It's not an expensive process. Doesn't have to be a super long one. It's just really about adopting, people's ideas that have been thinking a lot about these issues in a really important time. So I just encourage you to invite the community in to help you be a leader in this work. I know that the youth council that I work with, it's on their agenda this year to take their ideas to each of the schools that they represent on our council. So I sort of see like the conversation is coming, and you have the opportunity to be the first and be leader in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that'd like to address the board? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shayl Norris. I'm also not a Portland resident. I'm a very active auntie of residents in the Portland area, but I'm a CAPE parent, but I also am of the founding executive director of a national organization called Safe Bay, and we also work to prevent sexual assault among teenagers. It's an organization that was created and run by students. And we did a summit at Southern Maine Community College on May of 22nd. Every single Portland high school was represented at the summit, brought students in, that we had students from every single high school in the district, and we took climate surveys of how their schools were doing from those students. And I can say unilaterally, and again, there were 15 different school districts represented, so not just Portland, but unilaterally, they reported that they did not get they did not get the proper education about consent, bystander intervention, Title IX awareness. They all reported unilaterally that they were not receiving that information at school. And there are a lot of opportunities to, I really second the statement that there's an opportunity to step up, be a model district, and really raise the bar for the other school districts around. I also can comment as a parent of my daughter, Ayla Mansman, who brought these same requests to her district in Cape Elizabeth and was unilaterally silenced by her district, resulting in a court case that the ACLU took on. I would caution you very, very strongly against taking a stance of not listening to students, because they will make you listen, whether I want them to or the district wants them to or not. It really is an opportunity to learn from Cape Elizabeth's mistakes and listen to your students and give them the opportunity to help you lead. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have the opportunity to thank the school board members who have been supportive of me in this work so far?
Absolutely.
So Emily Figdor, Mickey Bondo, Tim Atkinson, I think is yours. They have been supportive of me since the beginning of this work, and I hope that you will continue to collaborate with me to ensure that students are safe. I believe my contact information, my studentspeakup.pps@gmail.com. You can ask me any questions or notify me about anything. I will be happy to talk through more.
Thank you. Just as a heads up, I think that we didn't have enough copies for everyone. So if there's any way that you could either email it or maybe we can probably make copies ourselves. But
Can I email this to the Portland Public Schools board
please do.
thing that'll
Absolutely.
get to all of you?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you very much for hearing our concerns.
Thank you. So if there isn't anyone else to address the board, we'll close public comment and we'll bring it back to us. Is there any board discussion on the motion? Anyone? Ms. Morioni and then Ms. Figdor.
So, hi, Sasha. So I've been meeting with Sasha for, I think, 2 years now. Zoe forgot to mention my name. No, but reason why I only say that is simply because I have been a huge proponent of exactly what our speakers have been saying since Sasha came to us and brought forward her survey that she's done with our schools. Ms. Davis has been there. I think majority of the board members know this, and I think we just unfortunately have been a bit slow in moving forward on it. And I just want to apologize about that, honestly. I don't really have a very strong reason, except for the fact that this is a great opportunity, and I appreciate you all coming forward tonight, a great opportunity to realize that we are, as mentioned in the audience, we have an opportunity here to really listen to our students and listen to their voice, most importantly, because it's a safety issue. When we talk about safety in school buses and we talk about safety in all of our schools, this is something that can be addressed, and I do very much like the recommendations that were brought forward even by our community members. And tonight we have in front of us, this is a little, we have a long list of policies here to work on, but I do like the fact that, and I do want to say, I appreciate very much the work of the policy committee, because this is one of the board's responsibilities, and that's also been lacking, to very least get these up to date. So I am going to support what we have in front of us tonight, based on the fact that we can no longer go, just okay, because these are back in 2013, some are even earlier than that. We need to get these at least voted on, done. But I will not stand by any longer to allow community members to come forward day after day to tell us, things we absolutely need to consider and work on that could be potentially just a very easy policy decision. It's not easy, but it's just going to, just as our hard work, and Mr. Atkinson can attest to this, the hard work that was done on other policies, it's going to take collaboration. And I think I see a lot of nodding heads, and I think we've got the power to do that amongst the board members. So I'm going to support our policy work that's in front of us tonight, but I couldn't stand by and let our community members know that you are being heard. So I appreciate you being here tonight.
Ms. Victor, would you line up, and then Ms. Davis?
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who came and spoke tonight and attended, because this issue was before us. I want to particularly thank Sasha for tremendous work. I recently looked through the website that Sasha created, and it is so impressive and something that's I believe, so missing as a resource for our students. I have a tween myself, and I can see how the information that you've put together would be a tremendous asset to her understanding of the world that she is trying to navigate, and her rights, and what to do in situations where she or her friends or others are experiencing sexual harassment and assault, which we know is happening in our schools. And that's just speaking from the perspective of a parent where I see the vulnerability of our students and the urgent need to improve the information that we provide them, and the policies that guide our practices. So I absolutely will support these largely non-substantive policy changes, get this policy and the others up to legal compliance. But I really do encourage us to take a deep dive on this issue, to really do the work that we've done in the past on the transgendered policy, that I think we all felt so proud about. This issue has been simmering for quite some time, and I think it is time for us to really take it on, and absolutely to be a leader, and to have the students' voice at the center of the process. So thank you so much, Sasha in particular, but also everyone else who has been a part of working to protect, inform our students, and improve the safety of students in our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Ms. Davis? And then Ms. Bond.
I would like to echo Ms. Morioni and Ms. Figdor. We are aware that this is an area that needs more substantive work, and our goal by bringing it forward at this point was simply to get it at least kind of its head above water legally. And I would really urge the board going forward to work on this in the new year. When we think about trying to move our achievement, we really need to think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we've talked about food, we've talked about safety. This is one of those basic safety issues that if a student doesn't feel safe at school, then it's really hard to learn. And if we want to move our students' achievement, we need to make sure that every student feels safe and is well fed and essentially cared for in our schools, and that we're meeting them where they are in order to move them academically where they need to go next. So I would really urge the board in the year ahead to circle back to this and take it on as a substantive a more substantive policy change and procedure change, because some of what's been talked about tonight are really the procedures that stand behind a policy, and do that, as I say, in the coming year, because it is time to do so. But in the interim, let's pass it, get it at least legally compliant, and then circle back to it in the coming year. Thank you. And thank you to the community for coming out tonight and reminding us yet again that this is something that its time has come, and the board needs to work on it in the future, the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Bondo?
I think just want to say thank you. Thank you to come forward and really to be a voice for the voiceless, because I think it's a wake-up call for us as a board member and also as a parents and community members, because I put myself on the shoes on the children who came to the different place with a trauma already, and they just don't have a voice to come forward and speak out with those kind of harassment, or have a parents who can support and come in front of the board and speaking on their behalf. So I think it's something that we need to try thinking as a community, are we building a better community? Because when we look to our Portland Promise, we see what we try to invest for our student, the whole student. So everything is about safety for them to be able to navigate to a system where they can feel more secure, so they can achieve what they want to achieve. So I think it's up to us to figure out the ways to try to revise some of the policies, because when I look at the years, those policies been revised 2013, a long years back, so it's time for us to try to figure out how we can update a little more those policies, make sure that the procedure, just like Mrs. Laurie just mentioned, can go to actions. Better just stay on the paperwork, more actions, and giving a lot of voice to the student. We just recognize those students all the time here when they are standing and speaking out, but I think now we need to recognize the voice from outsider, from the student beyond the board, and be also on the school, because they are the ones facing those situations in the front. Thank you. And I will support that.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Victor, did you have something else to add?
Yes, I guess just responding to Ms. Davis, I agreed with much of what Ms. Davis said, but I would like to see us take this on with some urgency. This is an issue that we've been kind of pushing to the sidelines for a long time, and if we wait until next year, then we're right in budget season, and it's very hard for us to take a hard look at an issue in the midst of budget season. So I would encourage us to move as quickly as we can, and to define a process and figure out our what it will entail. I also do think there are policy changes that we need. As I read this policy, I don't see it being anywhere as comprehensive as it should be. So I would like to consider policy changes in addition to other changes in practice and procedure.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Mr. Atkinson?
I share the sense of urgency, and I think I feel the sense of urgency actually around the table. And I'm wondering, I don't think it's part of our practice that I've seen to refer something to a committee sort of formally from the board level. That's just not something that I've seen in my brief tenure here. But I'm wondering if we can take the non-substantive changes that we have tonight, and pass those as they are, but in addition, refer this to the policy committee for immediate consideration, so that we can get this right onto our next policy committee agenda and dive into the work. I think I hear a lot of intention of let's take this up soon, let's figure out the process, and I think we've been sitting on this for long enough, so I'd like it to move on to that next phase. I've heard both community members and board members liken this to the transgender and gender expansive students policy. As most board members probably know, I came to a board meeting as a community member and said, we need to work on this. And I can't tell you what it meant to me to have staff say, yeah, it's scheduled, it's on our next meeting, and we're going to dive into this right away. And they included me in that, and that's why I'm sitting in the seat today. That's why I'm here doing this work. So if we can do that again, let's do it.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Ms. Davis?
I would be glad to have the board refer it back to the policy committee. I was by no means pushing it way off into next year. I think for the community to just remind you that we're facing an election, I'm chair of the policy committee. I have one more meeting. I am glad to take this up, but my last meeting as chair of the policy committee, and then I will be off the board, so it will need to get handed to the next policy chair. But if the board wishes to send it back to the policy committee, I'm very happy that we'll put it on our agenda for our next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Moroney?
So this is a long list of policies here, and from what I gather of those policies that we're referring to, I'm going to do my best here, but I think the one that I would like to offer an amendment of our vote right now to have policy, the harassment and sexual harassment of students policy, which is policy ACAA, that would be tabled and brought back to the policy committee. I'm sorry, hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go, Ms. Davis, and then Ms. Victor wanted to chime in.
I guess I would suggest to the board that we approve the legal changes, so we've got that. It's just get that done, and then direct us to have the policy committee put this at the top of our workload. We have had a year-long work plan, and to put this, jump this over the other things that are still there, and there are a bunch, and have us work on the more substantive, get that started at our next meeting.
I'm happy to do that as long as we are all in agreement right now that will happen. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Victor, did you have something to add, or sound like Ms. Davis? All right, any other, pardon me? Tim, I'm sorry, Ms. Atkinson.
Just for transparency's sake, I don't know if this is to Ms. Davis or to Superintendent Botana, but what are the things at the top of the priority for the policy committee? What would this displace?
I don't have that. I'm not prepared to answer that right now. I don't know off the top of my head.
So, can I read that as
I know
this
that we
seems more
have two
important?
policies that we currently have a building leaders and others are involved in revising alcohol,
Tobacco use.
tobacco and vaping, and the library policy around. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but Aaron, can you help me? What are we doing? It's contested curriculum, basically, when somebody doesn't want to participate in the regular curriculum.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Aaron Townsend, Assistant Superintendent. 3 policies we're engaging around the, tobacco, which is inclusive of the vaping. 1 around medical administration of medicine, which is inclusive of the new language around medical marijuana. And then the third is the library policies, the challenge policies. So those are the 3 we're engaged in, kind of getting input on, so we can incorporate this work too.
Excellent, thank you.
That would be done. It's in curriculum.
Do we have any further board discussion? Ms. Victor?
I guess I have a procedural question as a newer board member. I guess I still get to say that because it's still not quite the end of my first year, right?
Yes.
Have another meeting? Maybe not. Maybe two. Thank you.
So your rookie season, yeah.
Is there a process by which we could formally refer this issue to the policy committee and ask the committee to act expeditiously on this?
Ms. Thompson?
To Ms. Vigdor's point, I think what we could do is pass this policy with the notation as part of the vote for it to go back to the policy committee, opposed to putting a new motion in, but just make it part of the plan and the vote. That's all.
I see a lot of nods around the table.
Sorry, does that require a formal amendment, or is that just a friendly?
As part of the approval, you can make it contingent upon. So the particular policy is contingent upon it being approved this evening as amended with the notation that it will go back to the policy committee. But I don't think it's language change per se. I don't know.
I know that I think previously we have just when staff and the committee chair and the committee members are all here, we've had the discussion in public. I think we're pretty transparently talking about what it is we're going to do, and so, I'm not sure official board action is needed. You've really directed us the same way that we sometimes direct staff to take something back and work on it and bring it back to us. I hear very clearly that the board and the public would like us to take this back, work at our next meeting, put it on our agenda, and begin the process of working on this.
Yeah.
It is, I suspect, not something, and I'll talk with Superintendent Botana, who staffs this committee, something where we're just going to be able to do it in a single meeting. But getting it on the agenda and part of the work that we're doing and beginning to figure out how to move it forward quickly and so on is definitely clearly what's being asked.
Yeah. Ms. Thompson, and then I'll bring us back around to wrap it up.
The only thing I would just say is when we say quickly is to get it back on the agenda, but similar to what Mr. Atkins said is I think we took 4-5 months to really do the due diligence on the transgender policy. We brought in 6 months. We brought in guidance counselors from the high schools, social workers, students, and it's a very well discussed item. The superintendent reached out to several different people in the community. We did some really great work, but I think it was done over 5 or 6 months, and we came out with a great product. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. So, number one, I'm very proud of the board for acknowledging that this is something that we need a sense of urgency to address. I'm really excited about the discussion. One thing that I could say, when I hear board members specifically address or rather specifically say that they want to take this up and that we're trying to discuss what's the right way of doing it and to be purposeful about how we address it. I want to say that I'll vouch for all these folks that they mean it. And I know that they can count on our support. I know the superintendent will be invested in this as well. And we want to make sure that we have a process that we can be proud of at the end. I think the transgender policy is something that we've all pointed to as a great example of process that's inclusive and that we went out of our way to speak to people that really needed to be part of that discussion. So again, I hope that this is another one of those opportunities that we can do that. One last thing before I ask for a vote. I just wanted to say, Sasha, this district is better because you're part of it. Okay? Having said that, we'll put it to a vote. Where am I? All those in favor of all those in favor of approving all non-substantive changes to policies recommended for revision by Drummond Woodson in policy books A and B as outlined in the attached memorandum, please indicate. And that's unanimous with the students voting in favor. Thank you all. Ms. Davis.
I would just like to note, since I think some of the agendas may not have it, that the next policy committee meeting is at 7:30 on November 14th, which is a Thursday, and will be at the Portland District offices. The agendas typically come out the week before, sometime the week before or earlier in that week. And if you want to be on the mailing list for that agenda, please let a board member or the Superintendent Botana know, and he'll make sure that you're on it. But since we're going to be taking this up at our next meeting, I wanted to make sure that people knew that was Thursday, November 14th at 7:30 at district offices.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. All right, we're moving on to new business. A reminder, there are no comments on first reads. We have a first read to approve the district emergency management plan. And we have a first read to authorize the superintendent to sign a memorandum of understanding with the City of Portland Police Department for school resource officers. And as a reminder, we have a workshop at the end of tonight's meeting where we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and dig a little bit deeper into the MOU and the language that we're adding. All right, so next on to personnel items. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, 1 year only teachers. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Balfons. Will the superintendent speak to the motion?
Ms. Stoddard?
Good evening. Tonight we have 2 one-year-only teachers and 1 regular teacher for your approval. All are budgeted in the current year budget.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, there is no public comment on personnel items. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, one-year only teachers, please indicate. That's unanimous with the students voting in favor. We'll note that Ms. Victor was not. We'll note that Ms. Victor was not in for a vote, so unanimous was a vote of 8 people. Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve personnel items listed, election of probationary teachers. Is there a motion? Mr. Atkinson, second by Ms. Bondo. Superintendent, or maybe Ms. Stoddard? Same as the previous one, so nothing.
It's the same. I think Barb spoke to both of them.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So again, they're budgeted. There's one and.
Correct. Yeah, there's one regular, permanent, and then the 2 1-years that you just voted on.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, there is no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? Seeing none, put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, election of probationary teachers, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. All right, so given that it's before the hour of 10 p.m., it's 8:38 p.m. Is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, I just want to give an extra moment if anyone on the floor wanted to address the board. All right, if we don't have any, we'll close the floor. And do we have a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Ms. Thompson, second by Ms. Davis. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. We've adjourned at 8:38 p.m.